Good day everyone, I am April Joy Padillo and now I will discuss the milestone in language development and speech and language disorder. According to Perangelo 1998, the milestone in normal language development from birth to 5 years are shown. So it is helpful to know how infants, toddlers, and children acquire language as they mature. From the moment your baby first enters the world, they are ready to learn. In fact, one of the most crucial time periods in child's development and learning is from birth to 5 years old. By looking at the different milestones, you as a parent, doctors, and also teachers can pick up on when development is not going according to plan. Watching your child's development is an amazing and unique experience, but these markers can give some parents combination of excitement and anxiousness. You look forward to your baby's first smile, their first steps, and their first word, but you also worry that they could be falling behind their peers. So a 6-month-old baby coos with facial expression and gross body movement in response to an adult's stimulation. Cooing is a speech sound because the characteristic resemble certain sounds that adults produce. In the given example, speech is present but language is not used. Parents and significant others around the baby might be understand him or her, but most others will not able to interpret the sounds being said by the baby. Speech of very young children hardly conforms with adult language. As what I experience in taking care of my nephews, they say things that only I can understand. The first form of communication of a 6-month-old baby is crying. In social and emotional, they can recognize familiar people, likes to look at themselves in a mirror and laughs. In speech and language, babies make sounds of comfort, such as cooing and gurglings. They take turns making sounds with you, and they make squealing noises. In cognitive, babbling soon follow as a form of communication. They also put things in their mouth to explore, reaches for toys and close lips to show they don't want the food. While in physical, they rolls from tummy to back, pushes up with straight arms on tummy and leans on hands to support themselves when sitting. In birth to 6-month-old, the baby can also produce vowel sounds. 6 to 12 months, the baby's voice begins to rise and fall while making sounds. In social and emotional, the baby plays games with you like peekaboo. Child begins to understand certain words. In speech and language, the baby can wave and it means bye-bye. They can understand the word no, and also they can pronounce mama or dada or another special name. Child may perform an action with us. Child may repeat words said by others. In cognitive, they put items in a container and looks for things they see you hide, such as a toy under the blanket. While in physical, the baby pulls up to stand, walks while holding onto things, drinks from a cup without a lid as you hold it, and uses their thumb and pointer finger to pick up small bits of food. 12 to 18 months, child has learned to say several words with appropriate meaning. Child is able to tell what he or she wants by pointing. Child responds to simple commands. In social and emotional, the baby points to show you something interesting. They puts hands out for you to wash, looks at a few pages in a book with you, and helps you dress themselves. In speech and language, the baby tries to say 3 or more words besides mama or dada, and they follow steps direction without any gestures. In cognitive, they copies you doing choirs and plays with toys in a simple way like pushing a toy car. While in physical, they walks without holding on to anyone or anything. They scribbles, they drink from a cup without a lid and may spill a little. They eat with their fingers. They try to use spoon and climbs off and on a couch or chair. 18 to 24 months, there is a great spurt in the acquisition and use of speech at this age. Child begins to combine words, child begins to form words into short sentence. In social and emotional, they notice when others are hurt or upset and looks at your face to see how you react in a situation. In speech and language, they point to things in a book. They say at least 2 words together, points to at least 2 body parts and uses more gestures like blowing a kiss. In cognitive, they hold something in one hand while using the other hand. They try to use switches and knobs and plays with more than one toy at the same time. In physical, they can kick a ball, they runs, walks up a few stairs with or without help, and eats with a spoon. In 2 to 3 years old, at this age, the child talks and asks questions. Child has a vocabulary of about 900 words. Child participates in conversation. The child can identify colors and they can use plurals and tell simple sentence, and also child begins to use consonant sounds. In social and emotional, they can now play next to other children and sometimes play with them. Show you what she can do saying like, look at me, and follow simple routine when told, like picking up toys when you say it's time to clean up. In speech and language, says about 500 words, says two or more words with one action word, names things in a book and say like I, me, or we. In cognitive, they uses things to pretend show simple problem-solving skills, follow two steps instruction, and knows how to recognize at least one color. In physical, they uses their hands to twist things, take some clothes off, jump off the ground with both feet, and turns book pages. One at a time when you read. In 4 to 5 years old, child has an average vocabulary over 1,500 words. Child's sentence average 5 words in length. Child is able to modify speech. They able to define words, can use conjunction, and child can receive poems and sing songs from memory. In social and emotional, they pretend to be something else during play, as to go play with children, comforts others who are hurt, avoid danger, likes to be a helper, and changes behavior based on where they are, such as a playground or library. They follow rules or takes turns. They can sing and they can dance or ask for you and does simple choirs at home. In speech and language, they say sentence with four or more words. They say some words from a song or story, talks about at least one thing that happened during the day, and answers simple questions. In cognitive, they can name a few colors, tell what comes next in a well-known story, and draws a person with three or more body parts, and they can also count to 10, name some numbers between 1 to 5 when you point to them, uses words like yesterday or morning. They pays attention for 5 to 10 minutes during activities. They write some letters in their name and names letters when you point to them. In physical, they can catch as a large ball most of the time. They serves themselves food or pours water, and bottoms and holds crayons or pencils between finger and thumb. So the principle of the uniqueness of a person includes the way a child acquires speech and learns in language. There are individual differences in the way children develop speech and gain efficient use of language. So, can speech exist without language? Yes, in the case of infants who communicate their feelings of discomforts and hunger through crying, satisfaction through smiling, cooing, gurgling, and babbling. Cooing produces a speech sound that resembles some sounds that adult makes. Some children may develop speech faster or slower than the timetable or acquired language in unusual sequence. Others may deviate from the normal sequence of a language development to such an extent that may result to serious difficulties in school and interpersonal relationship. A lag of more than 3 months should not be a cause for worry, but a longer period of delay may signal that presence of communicative disorders and necessitate professional service. Communicative disorders exert a great impact on the life of children who are likely to have problems in almost all aspects of education and personal adjustment. The question on whether speech can exist without language was raised earlier. The answers cited the prelingual speech among babies in the form of crying, smiling, cooing, gurgling, and babbling. This time, the question is a reverse. Can language exist without? Again, the answer is yes. People who are deaf communicate through sign language. The American Sign Language or ASL is a language because it meets the criteria for a language. American Sign Language communicates thought, ideas, message through manual method. ASL has shared code, a unique grammatical structure, and arbitrary symbols composed of sign letters of alphabets, words, phrases, gestures, facial expression, and body movements. Finally, American Sign Language is generative. It allows an infinite number of sentences to be constructed to express one's ideas. And ASL is creative. They have original stories. They have poetry and other forms of written work can be expressed in sign language. Oftentimes, children with autism or mental retardation echo or repeat the message that adults relate to them. Here, speech is present and children's responses may be understandable to the sender but not to the other people. This example illustrates that while speech and language are basic in the process of communication, the latter does take place without the use of speech or language. Special education teachers are sensitive to the way children with language difficulties communicate thoughts. In turn, they employ effective modes of responding to their message so that communication will continue in the teaching-learning process. So let's move to speech and language disorder. So speech and language disorder cause problems in communication period in the United States. It is estimated that 5% of the school population has communication disorder. In the Philippines, the incidence of children and youth with communication disorders may be higher. A speech disorder is a condition in which a person has problems creating or forming the speech sounds needed to communicate with others. This can make the child's speech difficult to understand. So the common speech disorder are voice disorder, articulation disorder, and fluency disorder. So voice disorder are caused by the problems when air passes from the lungs through the vocal cords and then through the throat, nose, mouth, and lips. Next is the articulation disorders. If your child has an articulation disorder, they have problem making sounds and forming particular speech sound properly. They may not be able to produce a particular sounds. For example, they cannot make the R sounds and say wabbit instead of rabbit. Next is fluency disorders. When you have a fluency disorders, it means that you have trouble speaking in fluid or flowing way. You may say the whole word or parts of the word more than once or pause awkwardly between words. This is known as stuttering or nauutal. This is also called stammering or childhood onset fluency disorder. This is a speech disorder that involves frequent and significant problems with normal fluency and flow of speech. The exact cause of fluency disorders are not known. It may be genetic and run in families. It can happen at the same time as another speech disorder. The sign of a fluency disorder can be made worse by emotions such as stress and anxiety. So next is language disorder. What is language disorder? It is a communication disorder that can affect kids. Children with language disorder have trouble understanding and speaking. They may be struggle with written language or spoken language or both. The common language disorder are delayed language. Your child may have a language delay if they don't meet the language developmental milestone for their age. Their language abilities may be developing at a slower rate than most children's. They may have trouble expressing themselves or understanding others. Delays in language are the most common type of developmental delay. 1 out of 5 children will learn to talk or use words later than other children their age. Some children will also show behavioral problems because they are frustrated when they can't express what they need or want. The second is aphasia and related disorder. Aphasia is a language disorder that happens when you have brain damage. Your brain has two halves. Language skills are in the left half of the brain in most people. Damage on that side of your brain may lead to language problems. Damage on the right side of your brain may cause other problems like poor attention or memory. Aphasia may make it hard for you to understand, speak, read, or write. It does not make you less smart or cause problems with the way you think. A collective term used to describe impairment in carrying out purposeful movement. People with severe aphasia are usually extremely limited in explaining themselves by pantomime or gesture, except for expressions of emotion. Commonly, they will show you something in their wallet or lead you to show you something, but this is the extent of their nonverbal communication. The third and last communication disorder is hearing disorder. Hearing loss can affect a child's development of speech and language skills. When a child has difficulty hearing, the areas of the brain used for communication may not develop appropriately. This makes understanding and talking very difficult. So conductive hearing loss happens when the natural movement of sound through the external ear or middle ear is blocked, and the full sounds does not reach the inner ear. Conductive loss from the exterior ear structures may result from earwax. Your body normally produces earwax. Conductive hearing loss cause range from earwax to ruptured eardrums. Second is sensorial hearing loss. Your ear is made up of three parts: the outer, the middle, and the inner ear. The sensorial hearing loss is based on problems with the auditory nerve and inner ear. The more damage you have, the worse your hearing is. You may find that some pitches are harder to hear than others. Specifically, this type of hearing loss can make it difficult to hear soft sounds and understand speech. Sensorial hearing loss, or SNHL, happens after inner ear damage. Problems with the nerve pathways from your inner ear to your brain can also cause SNHL. Soft sounds may be hard to hear. Even louder sounds may be unclear or may sound muffled. Third is auditory nerve and central auditory nervous system hearing loss that occurs when sounds enters the ear normally. But because of the damage to the inner ear or the hearing nerve, sound is not organized in a way that the brain can understand. Auditory ear nerve. This nerve sends sounds information from the ear to the brain. The auditory hearing system is a pathway processes sound information as it travels from the ear to the brain, so that our brain pathways are part of the hearing. The last is functional hearing loss. Functional hearing loss, or pseudohypoacusis, is more common in adults than in children, whereas motivating factors in children seen with functional hearing loss often involve attention-seeking behavior or the avoidance of some unwanted activity. Emmerich and Hines in 1986 cited and Howard 2003 distinguish a communication differences from a communication disorders. The following criteria must be present to indicate the presence of the communication disorder. So first is the transmission and perception of message is faulty. The person is placed at an economic disadvantage. The person is placed at a learning disadvantage. The person is placed at a social disadvantage. There is a negative impact on the person's emotional growth. The problem causes physical damage or endangers the health of the person. So in this chapter, speech and language disorder and communication disorders are used interchangeably. These are the disorders in speech, language, and those that result from hearing disorders. The disorders in speech are voice or phonation and resonance disorders. The language disorders come in the form of delayed language, aphasia, and related disorders, while the communicative disorder that results from damage to the hearing mechanism are caused by conductive hearing loss, sensorial hearing loss, auditory nerve and central auditory nervous system hearing loss, and functional hearing loss. The common speech and language disorder are characterized by difficulty in understanding language and limited ability in choosing appropriate words and combining into correct sentence. Speech and language disorder affect cognitive development and learning, emotional development, social interaction, and job opportunities. So that's all. Thank you for listening. God bless.